All right. We are up and running and live. So let's get everything switched over to the jam stream layout and we will get started. There we go. So while we do sort of an intro for today, I'm going to put on the beat I recorded real quick on the loop before we got started. There we go. Hey, we got a chat from T is Sable? They say her name. T-ishable? I don't recognize her username, but it's not a first time chat. But I'm in your recap. Well, hello there. Welcome to the jam stream. We're just getting started, kind of walking through an intro of what we're going to do today. And so kind of building on what we talked about last time, I think in the last jam stream. In the last jam stream, we did a bit of a discussion on basics. We talked a little bit about some technique type stuff, and then we did a little bit of practice. Oh, it's Med Kit. You changed your name. I see. Top 10% of the chatters, 12 hours, 441 messages, 46 to 4 channel points. I see. You changed your name, man. That's why I didn't recognize it, and that's why it didn't give me a first time chat. So how do you say your name? Is it T is Table? Is it T is Shable? Let me know in the chat how to say your name so I say it correctly. That's pretty important. Oh, yes, welcome. Kind of building off of what we did before, I definitely want to spend some time talking about technique. We'll do some drills and some practice type stuff, and maybe do some check-in on the developing sounds that we've talked about before. I would like to recircle around to inward bass and give kind of an update on where that technique is at, kind of like an overall sound check on some of the things I've been working on. I see. T-ishable. Like bluish with T. I gotcha. T-ishable. You want me to call you T? You let me know what you want me to call you, or I can say the whole thing. It is your call. Hey, Edward's here. Edward says able to what? Welcome, Edward. We're just getting started. Just say med. All right, I can do that too. I will try and remember that. All right. So we're gonna start with some warm up drills for basics. We can make sure sound check is good. Keeping an eye on the OBS audio readout here. Make sure everything is sounding good. Turn this off for a sec. Med says I missed you though. I missed you too. I know you've been kind of in and out and around, so I hope you're doing well and your holiday season isn't too crazy. It's that time of year. But let's start with some warm-ups, get the blood circulating, and then we will go into some drills and practice stuff. That says I finally got out of the hospital. I don't know if I knew you were in the hospital, but hopefully you're feeling all right and you're ready to vibe, because that's what we do here. What does circulating mean? Like blood circulation. So a lot of the beatbox techniques and stuff, especially things that involve the face muscles or facial parts like lips and whatnot, they need to be warmed up, just like when you're exercising, and you have to get the blood flowing into your muscles on your limbs and your body. Same thing for beatboxing. You need to be able to warm up things like your face, and it makes it easier to do certain sounds once you do that, as opposed to trying to do them cold. And so that's the whole point of doing the warm-ups, just to get everything limber, and then we can jump straight into doing different techniques. Like a good example, just for illustration purposes, the BGM or spit snare, the one that sounds like a clap. That one uses lip pressure in order to create the sound, but if your face isn't warmed up, like because you just haven't been doing any beatboxing for a while, then it's a little bit difficult to get that sound sharp and crisp. But if you warm up and do some drills like we're going to do here as an intro, then it gets more crisp and it sounds more regular. So we could do like a before and after. So again, BGM spit snare. We'll do some warm-ups and then we'll see if it's noticeably different. That one takes a little while, but as long as you're doing things that move your lips around, it gets easier. My BGM snare is definitely sharper than that. Like Med says, it sounds not like you do it. Yeah, it's because I'm not warmed up. So we'll go ahead and get started, and then we'll see as we kind of proceed. And so I plan on working that into some beats and some practice stuff too. As hopefully, if you have a really carefully trained ear on what we're doing, it'll sound different once it's warmed up. But yeah, good question. Feel free to keep asking stuff in the chat. That's why we do this. But we'll go ahead and get started. All right. I feel the blood flowing a little bit. Let me catch up on chat. Oh, I gotcha, Edward and Med. Oh yes, making sure to reconfirm pronouns, especially since Edward. I don't know if you were here when Tia Shable was first jumping on. It's Medkit with a different account name, so I will be calling them Med per what they asked earlier in chat, just in case you didn't know. Because I had to ask. I didn't recognize the username either. A Crusher's here. Crusher says, beat them boxes. Boxes are well beaten. Yeah, I know my model tends to kind of wig out a little bit because it's trying to track what my face is doing and my mouth is doing, and it obviously doesn't have enough animation frames for when parts of the face anatomy is moving really quickly. And sometimes if I'm looking around, I'm not staring straight at the camera the whole time. Sometimes I look up or down, then the eyes tend to kind of twitch a little bit. That's okay. If I ever eventually in the future get a new model, I'd want it to have something with a decent amount of animation so that it can track me super well, especially being able to move my head. Edward says, big Raku, not on my watch. Hey, there's a small Raku redeem. All right. Let's see if I can remember to turn it off in less than 40 minutes this time. But now, step up to the mic. All right, so kind of moving on from the warm-up. Talking about things that enable you to do techniques in beatboxing quickly and readily after you sort of, again, get the blood flowing, get everything going. It works that way for basses, any sort of vocalized sound, just like it's easier to sing when you do warm-up exercises as opposed to coming out and singing full blast when you're completely cold. All of those types of things, whether it's a strenuous activity, it's a musical activity, or whatnot, that applies to beatboxing 100%. And so a couple people I've talked to who've been doing it for a really long time stress the importance of making sure you warm up and just get ready. And if you're going to be performing, it's probably doubly important to make sure you're not walking out on a stage or for a battle or a competition completely cold. And then it's going to be a lot more difficult to do your different techniques if you do that. And so that's why we do a little bit of warm up and then we sort of kind of segue into the different things we talk about in sound theory. So let's change the caption. Oop. Cut my feet off. All right. And I have slowly drifted upwards. Okay, we'll leave that right there for now. And so talking a little bit about, from the warm-up whole topic of discussion, like I said, it works for any sort of vocal techniques, vocal bases, and whatnot. Also works for technicality. And since that kind of relies on speed, and a lot of technicality, the really fast patterns that you do for technicality, being able to do them completely cold is something that does come with practice. The more you practice and get muscle memory for the different high-speed combos and combinations of sounds, the easier it is to just do them without having to ramp up and warm up. But even still, if we talk about things like the TKK chains and the different high speed technicality patterns that we've been practicing, we've talked about on these streams, being able to do them at full speed, cleanly, and right out the gates is much more difficult. But as I've been sort of practicing, and it segues into the sound theory and developing technique discussion, it does get easier. And so we talk about things like the TKK or the permutations of things with the TKK pattern and putting them together with other combinations of sounds to create longer chains and get something like being able to do that fast just instantly is not something I could do right away. I had to practice it a lot, and I'm still practicing to get it even cleaner and be able to do it cold. But just being able to chain the rapid stuff straight away, that took a lot of practice and just training of muscle memory. And so it's part of the long-term development thing for beatboxing that I always tell people when they want to learn. You just have to grind. And that's kind of one of the topics I wanted to talk about today, mixed in with our whole discussion of sound theory, and eventually we'll get to BGM. Crusher says, I can't believe the real Edward Snowden is here. I always read it as Edward Snowden, as in Snow is the middle name. But I guess Edward can tell us, or not tell us, if he has to keep it a secret. And so let's talk a little bit about how the grind in beatboxing is, because oh, there's a timer. I actually saw it this time. Me embiggen myself. All right, we'll leave it there. How about Snowden? You get the Snowden. Like you're saying then, with like a slight, like a pigeon inflection. It's possible. Only Edward can tell us. And Edward is one of the OGs. He was there when I first started streaming on YouTube, and he's still a very secretive person. You may never know everything about him. Crusher says, Rocco, have I ever mentioned how much I love your VTuber? I haven't kept track. I think you've mentioned it before, but that's very kind of you, Crusher. I like this model a lot. It was a lot of work to get it made, and it's been rigged twice. The first initial rigging done by the artist that made it was fine. If you go back and look at the old stream archives on YouTube from when I first started, you'll see that it animates very differently. The face is a bit more static, and the body is a bit more static. But when I had Chibox redo my rigging maybe halfway into the first year of VTubing, he made it a little more dynamic so that I got some head movement, and the body moves a little bit, and then it doesn't look quite as stiff. It doesn't have on the head a full range of 3/4 motion side to side, because I think it has to be redrawn and completely re-rigged to do that. But it definitely gets the job done. And at some point in the future, it's not high priority, but I would like to get another model made so I have another type of outfit to wear, and then maybe I can work with someone who can focus on the dynamic aspects of movement. But that stuff is not cheap, and I'd much rather pour that time and money into getting project stuff done, because this model is served well, and it is pretty functional. But I appreciate the compliments, Crusher. That's very nice. I'm glad people dig it. I do get that compliment every once in a while. People say, "Oh, you have a nice model," and yeah, hopefully the content keeps up with the level of the model. Otherwise, what's the point? All right, so going back to the topic of the grind and talking about the practice aspects that we've talked about before on these streams when it comes to beatboxing, we talk about just repetition, right? Repetition for a lot of techniques, things like technicality included, is how you get a lot of the consistency and the ability to do things cleanly and quickly and all that other stuff. But at the same time, practicing and the grind also can get kind of monotonous. And it's really easy to get kind of stuck in a rut, especially if there's a technique or something that you're really struggling with learning or getting better at. It could be something, like inward bass for me, which is not an intuitive type of sound and something I really took a long time to learn until I found a technique that actually worked and allowed me to get the technique and get the sound to come out. It's good to kind of be efficient and economical with how you practice, because you could say, well, today I'm going to do nothing but train snares, and I'm going to do 2 hours of PF snares, just doing back to back for 2 hours until I feel like I've gotten enough practice, and then do something else. You could train that way. It's not necessarily wrong, but you get a lot more out of practice when you can create kind of an applied lesson. And I kind of think of it sort of like studying in school. You can study one thing really specifically over and over and over again until you just memorize it. But you will understand whatever it is you're trying to learn a lot more if you can figure out how to apply it in a context that makes sense. So in other words, let's say you have to memorize a science formula. And it's a formula in chemistry. I'm terrible at chemistry, but just for example, you want to memorize a formula in chemistry. You could spend all day just trying to memorize it over and over and over again, but that's not really going to help you understand it. It's going to help you remember symbols or numbers or letters and be able to regurgitate it, but you won't really understand what to do with it. Versus if you learn how to apply the formula or put it into problems or something else that's going to teach you why you're learning the formula, then that is a more effective way of getting it to stick understanding-wise, because if you don't do that, you'll memorize it long enough to, write it down or spit it out on a test, but as soon as that's done, it's gone. You won't have any real cemented understanding, and it's just gone. I know, because when I studied Japanese in Earth School, that was one thing I learned, is you can memorize a lot of stuff just by rote and have it completely committed to memory, but you have to understand a lot of it in order to use it. So it really just depends on what your intent is. And for beatboxing, again, you can learn all the techniques in a vacuum. You can learn your kicks, you can learn your snares, you can learn hats. But if you practice putting them together and applying them, and a really, really skilled beatboxer out in the pro scene from Russia named Helium, who I like a lot, that dude is crazy talented. He talks about treating beatboxing as like a musical skill, which it is. It's creating music. It's very non-standard and non-typical music, but it's still creating music. And so, again, you could practice your techniques all the time and get good at them, but you're going to need to apply them at some point, because you're not just going to go up to someone or be in front of a group to show off what you know, and they say, oh, show us beatboxing. You're not just going to go like all the snares at once, like, and just make a bunch of noises. You are going to need to be able to form a beat from patterns and create a routine and be able to show them something. And so I really like this idea of applying things practically. And you could treat it like songwriting, even if you're not a classically trained musician. Just think about, okay, how do I put all of these different sounds that I know how to use into something cohesive that's going to behave like a song? Starts with the rhythm, and then you could do things like add melodies, add basses, and all that, and you just sort of get in the habit of putting things together in a way where it's not just sounds, it's a song. It might be a simple song and not multi-layered with different melodies and harmonies and all sorts of stuff, but over time, as you learn more complex things, you start integrating that into the sounds and into the patterns and routines, and then it sort of evolves how you create beats and beatboxing. And I don't hear that discussed a whole lot, because a lot of people are really focused on, I want to learn this sound, or I want to learn how to do that one crazy technique I saw in a battle. And that's fine. But if you're just starting out and you're learning the basics, you kind of got to learn to walk before you can run. And if you're approaching it from a musical perspective and how to put stuff together, it will make you a better beatboxer in the future. And so that's kind of a soapbox, I guess, but it is something I wanted to mention since it's a little bit different as far as the grind goes when it comes to approaching beatboxing. Well, moving on, let's talk a little bit about developing sounds and things that we've been working on across the different streams and how things have been kind of evolving and updating as far as what I've been learning, since I feel like for folks who tune into these streams, being able to see some progression or status on what I talk about is interesting. And people can let me know, as usual, if they want me to bring up something from previous streams, or they say, hey, you haven't talked about this sound in a while. You know, how has it changed? Or have you learned anything? Or is it different now? And we could definitely work that in the discussion. So the first one, the biggest elephant in the room, would be the ongoing learning curve of inward bass. The biggest hurdle and sort of white whale of beatboxing for me over the last couple years is learning that technique, being able to do it, and then apply it. And so I'm still in the kind of point of learning the sound where I'm trying to get the sound to come out consistently and then slowly start trying to work it into beats, into patterns and whatnot. And so I'm not just doing it in a vacuum. And so to recap a little bit of what we've talked about before, inward bass is a vocalized bass, but done breathing in, using lower sections of your vocal cords to get a low kind of rumbling resonant sound. And it's, again, one of the most popular, but also one of the most difficult techniques to learn. And so for me, my inward bass, not being super warmed up, because we did a lot of sort of technical sounds, a little bit of the external vocalized basses, but my inwards bass sounds like whoa, 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 whoa. And unwarmed up, it is very soft. And the kind of tricky thing about warming this one up is different from some of the other ones, but doing things like a chest bass outwards is pretty close to the same region of the throat and vocal cords that you're using. So if you were to take that and just a chest bass, not a vocalized one, and you get the my chest bass is actually kind of leveled up a little bit just on its own because it's such a similar type of technique that practicing inward bass has caused my regular chest bass to get better. I get a lot more of a rumble now. So that's kind of an unexpected synergy that's nice, even though I don't use chest bass by itself too much. But if you take that and kind of feel where that rumble and the part of your vocal cords that are resonating comes from, when you're breathing in, you're kind of trying to hold the sound and the tightness in that region of the throat. And so that's how you're getting the whoa, whoa, whoa. A little bit easier for me to do consistently with my mouth closed. So if I breathe in with my mouth closed, but still push the bass lower, that's how you're getting the it's kind of rumbly and a little bit rattly. And the more you train inward bass, the more of a resonant subharmonic, like overtone sound you get. It's not really dry. You start getting more of a bass type sound. And it's really remarkable because inward bass comes in way lower than any other bass I can do. And I'm still learning it. If we think of the outward basses by comparison, like a vocalized chest bass for me, the lowest I could probably push it would be something like I don't know where that is on the note scale, but it's low. And then we turn it around and do the bass inwards, we get whoa, 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 whoa. It's really frustrating because I practice this a lot and it's not usually this soft when I do it. I think it's because I've been talking and I haven't had my vocal cords warmed up to the point where I can do the bass instantly. So let's kind of try it here. So if we compare outwards to whoa, 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 inwards, it's at least 1 or 2 steps lower on the bass scale. And that's really fascinating. And it explains why so many beatboxers use inward bass for things like drops, dubstep type songs, anything that's got a really aggressive low bass. You're being able to get that sound much lower, and you don't have to push quite as hard. You can get external basses really low. It's very possible. Crusher says that's really cool. I really wish I could demonstrate inward bass better. And maybe if we ever do daily beats in the future, I can focus on that to get more of a showcase of the sound, because it just feels really different when trying to present it as a topic versus when I'm just practicing it. Like I've said before, I got to post this meme that I made. I'll do it when I get around to it at some point in the future. But I do my best beatboxing in the shower, of all places. And I don't really have kind of like a stage fright type deal, because I've kind of done performing type stuff before. I've got like a little bit of a dancing background, so I'm kind of used to being in front of people. But I have the most creative ideas when it's just me by myself and no one else is around. And that's a bit of a struggle when it comes to a performing type of skill. But compared to the very first stream here, where I talked about inward bass, and even getting it to come out was really difficult, and you'd hear my voice cracking a lot more, I still think it's progress. So if we take the sound, and again, focusing on the kind of low isolation of where it's coming in, we could even use the technique I learned to just get the sound to come out, which is singing inwards and then dropping into a pitch that actually causes that rumble. That's how I learned it. And so I explained that a few times as far as a way to learn inward bass. But if we take the and then you just drop that down, you could hear it sort of start to lose any sort of melody, and then just becomes a low rumble. And then as you practice that, whoa, 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 it becomes, again, more of a bass tone instead of a growl. And I was just working on it earlier, and obviously doing everything else and talking probably stresses my voice out more, but we'll be checking in on this maybe every single stream going forward until I can do it in a vacuum. Crusher says, that's where I do my best singing. I wonder if it's particularly because your brain is not working as hard when you're in the shower. And also there's a lot of steam, and that definitely helps open up a lot of stuff from what I've read, science and things like that. I think that's pretty valid, Crusher. You're probably onto something there. Maybe it's sort of like for the airways and anything that's using air, your things are a lot more opened up because of the heat and steam. That could very well be. But I also practice a lot of stuff when I'm not in the shower, just doing whatever. Sometimes I'm at work if I'm not on a call or washing dishes. And it's easier for me to do the sounds. But I haven't been talking for an hour and working on everything else. So it's just endurance training. It's just practice and getting familiar with the technique to be able to do it quickly and on demand. And, that comes with time. Like on topic of basses, one of my favorites is vibration bass. And, I could do vibration bass cold anywhere because I've practiced it so much. Being able to just do a don't have to really warm that one up too much. I can just do it. I got to get there with inward bass, and that's the grind. I did see Crusher ask, are you breathing in when you do inward bass? Yes, that's what makes it difficult. For example, vibration bass, the one I just did, breathing out, right? Using the vocal cords and the resonation in the vocal cords to get that kind of rattly, low bass tone. Inward bass is the same thing, so same type of technique, but you're breathing inwards and you're using a slightly different part of the throat anatomy. And that's why it sounds different. External versus a whoa, 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 whoa. internal, you can tell it's different because it's being done with a different technique, different direction of airway, and that's what makes it really difficult. But it's super neat. Again, the fact that it goes so low just by default is really handy. And so what I've been kind of practicing, just to give you folks some insight into how I'm trying to learn inward bass, you pair inward bass with inward drags, which is using air inwards to create a sound and also help maintain your air supply as you're doing patterns or techniques. Inward drag by itself sounds like it's like that sucker punch drag that I do when I start my beats. The inward drag by itself is just blocking your airway partially with your tongue. You're not sealing it, but you're blocking it to create a hissing kind of noise, and that's the. And so, real quick to demonstrate what that looks like, you use that as a breathing technique in rhythm. And so you could do something like. And it's helping create a regulating rhythm of breathing in and out, which can allow you to beatbox for much longer while also creating a sound that's part of whatever it is you're performing or creating. So how that works with an inward bass, and I'm not too good at it, but it's what I've been practicing. You're combining the whoa, 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 whoa. And instead of a dry kind of inward drag, you're trying to do the inward bass in rhythm as you're breathing in. And so it might sound like it's really soft because again it's easy. It's not easy for me to get the sound out really loud. But you're switching out the for a I'm using like an M, like a ma sound, but you can do like any sort of mouth filter and it changes. It could be like a ba, so it could be like or it could be like a T sound, like a ta, it'd be like and so that is kind of the next application of the technique, in addition to just doing the long sustained bass notes like the whoa, 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 whoa. And I could feel the bass sort of settling in a little bit, and it's getting easier to do. So I don't know how well it picks up on the stream. I could turn my headphones up a bit. But the inward bass is starting to get a bit more of an overtone that you can hear instead of just a growl. And when you start hearing that whoa, 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 that is how the technique sort of evolves. And being able to do that on demand is where I'm working towards. But again, really interesting, difficult, but once you learn it, it's just practicing and learning how to control the sound. And then, like we talked about with putting into a practical application, figuring out how you're going to take that sound and start fitting it into stuff. And so we will definitely keep checking in on things like inward bass. Oh, I did see on the topic of the shower environment, Edward says also the acoustics. Yes. So interestingly enough, when you see people out in the scene doing shout out videos on YouTube for different channels or just to show what they're doing, a lot of people that don't have a professional studio setup film their videos in the bathroom, because the bathroom has great acoustics. It gives you like natural reverb and it's open and the sounds can really bounce around. And that's absolutely true. And that is kind of interesting. I've never recorded anything sound-wise in my bathroom. If I need to record an official type of sound or for a project I'm working on, I just use my loop because I can put things like reverb into the actual mix and I can control things that way. But yeah, the bathroom, for whatever reason, is very, very practical when it comes to accommodating acoustics for beatboxing. Edward says, sounds like a beat idea. What? Beatboxing in the bathroom? You could. You could duplicate a lot of the mixing with effects on the loop station itself, so I wouldn't need to. Also, my recording setup does not reach into my bathroom. That's the other problem. I don't have a mobile audio capture setup. So it's actually easier for me to just turn the reverb effect on and we could pretend like I'm in the bathroom. All right. So we talked a little bit about sound theory and technique, but we haven't really done a lot of beatboxing. And I know I've kind of fallen into that last couple streams. We've been discussing things like techniques and practice methods and whatnot, but we haven't done a lot of beatboxing. And so for the last leg before we go into the BGM creation, let's do some just regular drills. And actually, let's do this. Let me make it a little more interesting. We haven't done a freestyle challenge in quite a while. I'm aware that it is something that we were doing back to back, and then we kind of mixed up some other topics. So let's do this. I need to go and figure out how to start this thing. This one? No, I think it's this one. Nope, they got the first one right. There it is. Okay. Yeah, that pauses. That resets. Edward says, beatbox directly into the toilet and then outro is a flush. That's an interesting idea. Or I can use movie magic to replicate the sounds and then edit in the sounds later for things like the flush, and you folks would be none the wiser. I say that because I don't want to get my several $100 mic anywhere near my toilet. All right. All right, so the rules for freestyle challenge. Same thing as before. I have to continue to freestyle until I either run out of sound ideas or I have to physically stop. Like if my throat just gets so dry that I can't make any sounds and it basically physically stops me. And I can't pause to drink water. I think that would be cheating. I could stop to breathe, obviously, so I don't pass out. But our personal time to beat, according to this on screen, is 17:37, so just shy of 18 minutes straight. And so that's going to be a challenge because I haven't done this in a while, but we're going to give it a shot. And so for folks that are watching in the chat now, once I get started and everything starts rolling, I won't be able to talk to people or read the chat because that'll be stopping and killing the challenge. So I defer to you folks. If people jump on and start talking or say hi and they wonder why I'm not responding for a little bit, then if you could please just let them know what I'm doing if they don't know already. I don't want to seem like a jerk for not responding to people, but the whole point is a challenge. So I'm going to start the timer, and one thing I generally don't do is I don't look at the timer because then it distracts me from creating the beats. So we're going to start, and we're going to see how well we do. Time to beat, 17:37. So let's get it. All right, let's take a pause and get some water. All right. 2028. New personal best. Yes, that is correct, Edward. You are here to witness it. It is true. Whew. Let's update this so I don't forget. 2028. Not 220. Maybe someday. 2028 non-stop freestyle personal best. That's gonna be a tough one to beat, man. Now I don't know if it's considered cheating. Edward, you might have heard it a little bit since I know you've been around when we've created a lot of BGM tracks. But I worked in some remixes for a couple of the tracks that I've made. I didn't do them necessarily one-to-one, but I worked in some new remixed versions of them as part of the routine as I was going because the ideas popped into my brain. So we did a slight remix of Baile de Caballos, the horse dance one. We did Super Bossa Nova, and we did Under the Ground, and the last one was a slightly reworked version of Amplitude. So I'll let the council rule if doing that is considered cheating, but I think as long as I'm not doing the same songs every time I do one of these challenges and just like, oh, I gotta do another remix of Under the Ground, I think it should be considered part of the total time. Although I'll have to make a mental note. Pick some different tracks next time if I'm gonna do that. But all right. Edward said, I like how you went from Super Bossa Nova to a reggaeton beat. Yeah, that was sort of what I was doing with the Baile de Caballos beat. Because it also has like a reggaeton beat because it goes like... But it has that weird cadence switch up with using the filters. I can't really do that with my regular beats. But I took it and I slightly altered it. I didn't do the bass line because that one goes... So let's see. That's actually kind of difficult to do. So I didn't combine the bass, but it was a slight nod to that one. It is kind of strange how if you take like a reggaeton beat and you know like the and you speed it up a little bit and maybe add a couple switches and you do something like it becomes kind of like a Latin dance type beat. I just thought that was interesting. All right. Let me grab my chair and fix my audio setup, and we're going to segue into BGM brainstorming. I can finally sit down. There we go. Now I just gotta change the caption. As we segue into coming up with ideas for BGM stuff, I didn't want to poll the audience here. This is not something anyone has to really give me information on now, but it's something I want to consider for content plans in the new year. When it comes to content formatting and the type of stuff I do, would people be interested in more jam streams? I know it's probably the most unique thing I do. And right now we kind of do them every other week. Oh, come on, camera. And so I'm going to float the idea out there now, and maybe I'll put up a Twitter poll. If I had my Discord live, I'd put it there too. I've got some time off coming up, so maybe I'll be able to get the Discord launched right before the end of the new year, or the current year, rather. But as a general idea, would people like to see more jam streams? Let me know. I'll be polling around more in the future. Just wanted to float the idea out there now because they don't require a lot of setup and prep. I just have to sort of plan what I want to talk about and then have an idea of things to do on the stream. But we could even do things like split up jam stream sessions where one of them is purely talking about technique and practice and whatnot, and another one would be purely based on doing BGM. Or, it could be a mix and we just do more than one, like one every week. I don't know if people would really want more than one in a single week. Hey, Sarahlad's here. What's up, Saralad? I had to look closely at what that emote is. I don't know what Wazzy's eating, but it's horrifying. But welcome to the stream, Saralad. Saralad says, I'm good, and you? Oh, I'm good, man. You just missed us doing the freestyle endurance run. I don't know if you saw that before I took the numbers off. But we hit a new personal best on nonstop freestyle challenge. So I'm pretty happy about that. I'm not happy about trying to beat that time next time, but that's why it's a challenge. Oh, Wazzy and her chicken nuggets. I see. Wazzy and her weird practice of skinning her chicken nuggets when she eats them. If I ever see her in person, I'm going to make it a point to bully her about that. All right, let's make sure all of our settings look good. So it says I was here when you were boxing. Okay, so you saw the new record. There are two witnesses, Edward and Sourlad. I don't know if Crusher was here at the time, but it is recorded in posterity forever. All right. So let's see. We are moving on to BGM brainstorming. And I was thinking a little bit about what I wanted to do. And we'll kind of workshop it a little bit and come up with some ideas. Oh, stretch from Sourlad. All right. It's just good to sit down. I kind of like the idea of going back to a more hip-hop style beat. I think we did like an electronic beat last time. I'd have to dig it up on the loop. I don't remember exactly where I put it. But it was kind of more of a electronic, dance-ish, kind of a weird dance-ish type beat. So what if we went back to hip-hop for this first one and tried to create something that was a bit more, hip-hop adjacent at least. It could be something I use as a beat for a future like rap challenge thing too. So it could be a dual purpose type of a beat here. So we could set up a moderate tempo, and maybe we use a BGM for this one. I think it's been a while since I've used a BGM snare, but what if we put a filter on it? So let me see. I'll turn the filter on and record it and then explain how it changes the sound. And we'll think if we want to use that for the beat itself. So let me turn that on, record it, and we'll see what it sounds like. Okay, that's with the filter up to about 60%, 70% ish, and it really muffles the sound. You get a lot of the snare just completely dropping out. So let me try and turn it down and we'll see how it sounds. I can't actually hear the playback in real time, I have to wait for the loop to finish recording and start playing back on its own. Then I can hear what it sounds like. So let's do that one more time. I think you folks on the broadcast can probably hear when I'm inputting the sounds whenever I turn the effects on. Even though I can't hear it in my headphones, you can hear me when I'm recording it. And so turning the filter down, it gives a bit more of a kind of scratchy noise. So I kind of like that as an instrument. So what if we try and construct the beat instrument by instrument, because I can't do the kick without the kick being muffled too when the filter's on. But we could do something like set up the kick line and then record the snare and then do something like add hats, and we build the beat component by component, which we've done before. So let's think of a tempo for the kicks. Maybe something like this we think. I've done one like that already. Maybe something like that. I just can't do the kick as part of the beat. So maybe. Okay, let's get that to loop a little bit better. Okay, that works. Now we turn on the filter and let's see if we can overdub and layer in the kicks on the same track. Okay, that's interesting. There's a bit of variance with the oscillation of the filter. So the first one comes in kind of muffled and you hear it a little more pronounced than the second one. Let's try and dial the filter back maybe to about 25% and then see if that makes it easier to hear both kicks. Because I like where the placement is. Okay, that's what it sounds like without the filter even on. Let's just turn it on. Interesting. That muffled it even more. What filter do I have on? Oh, let's try high pass. That might make it a little easier. And I have overridden one layer on the track for some reason. That's okay. It's really soft, so I can just dub over it. But what does this one sound like if we go 25% on high pass filter? Oh, interesting. That's not even enough to get distortion on it. All right. That's interesting. So turning the high pass filter to about 50%, and then putting in the BGM snares, it still has a little bit of variance, but it actually sounds like there's just two different snares, and I don't dislike that. It's a little subtle. It sounds like a snare pitch is shifting slightly, which I think we can work with that. But now let's think about adding in some hats. Maybe quarter notes. Just quarter note run all the way across. I think it might be off by a hair just in the middle. Let's try that again. I'm gonna add a little bit of reverb on the hats. Oh, sorry, I turned my mic down. That was probably a little bit soft there. Yeah, let's try a little bit of reverb, and then layer in the hats over everything else like we did before. Okay, that seems functional. Let's save our work before we override our stuff like we've done in the past. Hey, Slice of Coffee's here. What's up, Slice of Coffee? How are you doing today? Hope your Sunday's going well. And welcome to the Jam Stream. Okay, I'm gonna keep the playback a little bit lower so I can still talk, and let me know if you folks can't hear the beats being played back. Edward says, try double timing the hi-hats at the end of the loop. So I can dub in another one. I'm gonna have to be really, really precise with it. So it'd go like a double at the end. Is that what you're saying? Okay, I'm gonna have to turn this up so I can hear it. But I should be able to do that. That was actually really lucky. I got pretty close. I think that's all right. It's a little bit louder as I turned my mic back up, but it does give kind of like a groove, so we can keep that there. Now bass line. We could go guitar to bass. We could try doing a vocalized chest, something with a bit more of a low distortion on it. And we can run it through guitar to bass to give it more low end and see what it sounds like. So maybe something like... Now, what kind of progression do we want? Maybe up, down, down, something like that. Let's see if we can run that directly through guitar to bass and see what it sounds like. All right, let me turn that off for a sec. I'm gonna be a little bit soft because my boost isn't on. I think it creates too much distortion to have the rumble on there, because the guitar to bass is taking that and adding a low end to everything that's input. So we might have to go for like a sung note and then do like a vocalized chest as an overdub separately without having the guitar to bass on. So let's try and get a bass line note progression first, and then figure out if we want to layer anything on top of it. All right, let's turn that back on so I can talk again. It's simple. So again, we're gonna go simple and just try and get a good like vibe and a good groove from everything here. But I think it's a pretty functional bass line. And so if we're gonna try and layer something on top of it, we could try and duplicate the note progression with a vocalized chest bass and see what that sounds like. It's some like and I kind of wonder if it would make sense to do that on a separate track, because then we can manipulate them separately too if we want to add effects. I don't know, I think the oscillation on the vocalized chest might be a little distracting. First off, let's save the added bass line in so we don't lose that. If we're thinking about the balance of the mix, well, not making it too loud so you can still hear me talking, I think I would probably make them close to balanced for the beat and the bass line. One thing I've been having an issue with on some of the BGM stuff I've been recording recently, I think I tend to record drums a little bit on the loud side. And so you're in the mix, you might be hearing the rhythm and percussion maybe 10% higher than everything else. And I need to be careful not to do that every time, because it's one thing if the rhythm is kind of the forefront of whatever it has, but we don't want it just to be drums and nothing else. Edward says, maybe have a little oscillation during that long note. Oh, that's interesting. So we come in with like maybe a low recorded vocalized chest at that pitch, and so we up this a little bit. So are you talking about just having oscillation come in as an overdub layer on the sustained note of the bass? And maybe have it kind of in the background, so there's just a little bit of kind of, like you said, oscillation. We could also do that with a filter and it'd be a lot easier too. Like I could just hum a note and then turn filter on and it would oscillate and it'd sound like kind of a muffled, dropped out sound that's going over the top. So we could try that too. As long as I don't save anything, we can undo it. So let's see, filter. Okay, so it's not adding a real noticeable additional bass layer, but it's adding an effect. So I don't know if you can hear it because it's a little bit soft, but there's a little like that comes in when it drops down into the sustained note. Edward asks, can you change the speed it oscillates at? Yes, but I don't know exactly which part of the filter changes that. Let me take this off so we don't keep this layer. Wait, we can figure that out. I just don't know how to do that by default. So in filter, this is high pass. It's not the rate. Or the knob doesn't tie to the rate. I think that's just the intensity. So are you talking about so it'd be faster oscillation, right, Edward, instead of going like are you thinking about speeding it up, like shortening the sine curve as it were? Like that? That might be cutoff? Resonance? Okay, I see what you're saying. Let's see if we can figure out how to do it. Alright, I think it's rate. By tweaking this and lowering it, it's stretching out the oscillation. So if we want to collapse it and make it faster, I think I need to go higher rate. So I'm basically humming a note and listening to how the distortion changes when I adjust the setting. So let me see if I can get it to be like an 8th note. I think that's it. So that's rate 68. So if I add in the filter and now try and overdub it, let's see if we can get it to work. That creates a really interesting effect. I'm inclined to leave that on there. I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about, Edward, but it's really close. It's a pretty rapid oscillation that syncs up a little bit with the hats. And it's very subtle. It's in the background. It's an interesting suggestion. And I think for this one, when you think about how the song would be performed for the actual recorded version, being able to mess around with beat repeat and stretch out certain sections and then collapse the beat and speed it up for certain section would be kind of a really fun way to mix up different sections, like, you know, a section A, B, C type of deal. Like this is the beat repeat turned on in one section of the rhythm and stretched out and repeated infinitely. And it's coming in at the sustained note, I think. So if we did it earlier on, then it's looping the earlier part with the baseline progression. Because again, beat repeat takes a section and then it basically creates a copy paste and loops that over and over again. And depending on how much you have it turned up, it'll loop it either slower or faster. And then you turn it off and then it just resumes from that point as if nothing happened. And I do think it's interesting that if you choose to beat repeat the section that has the oscillation on it, then it kind of becomes like a buzzing noise. It's like that's kind of neat. That's beat scatter. I was just curious to see if we could did like a complete breakdown and switch up how it would sound if we just turn that on. But I don't think that's necessary. I like the idea of messing around with the beat repeat more. Interesting. And this is just two tracks so far that have something recorded on them. And this is reverse. This is the bass line reversed. And that's interesting. It basically has so when it's played in reverse, obviously it's got the sustain note on the front end, and then it does the progression on the back, kind of reversed, like you'd be scratching on a record backwards. But it's still rhythmically in line with everything else, so it doesn't get really out of sync with the rhythm. So if we're doing like an alternate version of the song, this bass line would work. I think it would be fine. I don't know if it'd be fine in the same song, but it does function as a bass line, which is interesting. Usually when you reverse something, the rhythm gets kind of funky, and it doesn't necessarily slot in too well. But it does work. What happens if we reverse the beat? Oh, interesting. We start and stop at the same time. I think the snare is slightly off when you reverse the rhythm as well. It doesn't line up kind of symmetrically like it does on the bass line when the bass line's reversed. But you could probably do something functional with that. But I'm more interested in the fact that the bass line slots in well when it's reversed. I'm gonna think about that. Alright, let's save our work again. Alright, now we gotta think of a third track to add. Maybe something, a high melody or a high synth. My question is, what would be something good to pair? Something that pair well with the bass line and the beat. I was thinking of like a horn. I haven't done anything with my trumpet in a while, but I worry that it'd be a little bit too aggressive trying to put that onto the beat. And I wouldn't want it to be something that loops every couple measures. I think that'd be a little bit obnoxious to listen to. Because since we haven't used that sound, and I didn't use it in any of the freestyle stuff either. I kind of forget that I have it sometimes. But the trumpet sounds like, and we could do something like add a filter over it or mute it out so that it sounds a bit more kind of muffled. We could do all sorts of stuff to the sound itself. But I was thinking, what if we tried to do like a jazz riff with a trumpet? I'm trying to think of where it would fit in with the bass line. What if we did something? Let me mess around with a couple ideas and maybe try and record them and just see how it slots in. Trying to think of where it would slot in note-wise that's not going to be completely out of tune with the bass line. That's interesting. If I had my synthesizer, I would just put it in as a actual synthesized note, and I could play around with the notes a lot better. I haven't used my trumpet in a bit, and so my ability to hold pitch is a little bit rusty. But I kind of like the idea of messing around with the synths more. Maybe something a bit more kind of chimey. Edward asks, can you make quick trumpet stabs? I can. That's not too difficult. But keeping it on pitch and on rhythm would be difficult. So instead of like you're talking about that might not be bad. I just did that randomly as I was messing around with quick stabs. That is like a harmonized version of the bass line. And I think it's octave up one octave. Or we could do it not quite as sharp and make it more smooth. The problem is it's a little bit difficult for me to hold pitch because my voice is a little tired too. But even something like a sequenced trumpet wouldn't be too bad. But that would be really specific stabs like you're talking about. So it'd be like a run and it would just repeat over and over again. Let's try throwing filter over that and see how it changes. Like a muted trumpet might not sound too bad, and just do like a 1, 2, 3 that's in between, and then it stops and it comes back in each time the bass repeats. So it's not doing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 over and over again. That would be interesting. Let's see what we can do with that. Okay, I think if I turn the filter down and make it a little bit, less drowned out, it would sound more like a kind of electronic distorted trumpet or like a muted trumpet. Right now the filter is at about 60%. If we drop it down in under 50, I wonder how it changes. Let's try that. Okay. It no longer is a trumpet, but that is a really interesting synth noise that I don't think I've ever heard in all the combinations that we've done so far. I think if the first pitch was a little bit lower so that it was even, that would not be a bad additional synth layer to add. It's just the first one is kind of weird. And it sounds different from the other two notes that come right after it. I'm gonna play around with doing that. Huh. I wonder if I can hum it and make it a little bit easier. Alright. It's an interesting experiment. Interesting. So seems to be a sweet spot in between maybe about 45 and 60% on the filter level, where it either sounds like this and sounds like kind of a weird synthesizer synth, or it muffles out completely and it becomes more like a muted trumpet. But filter has oscillation on it. Maybe that's why. Like maybe the rate is so high that it's causing that. You try turning the rate down and then apply it at maybe 55%. Let's see how it changes. We'll do the same melody and we'll see if it makes a difference. Oh, interesting. Lowering the rate causes a decay. So you get it on the first one, but you don't get the same distortion. Instead, it falls off. So what happens if we did a sustained note and we added that filter effect? Alright, the answer is you get a long, because I dropped the rate on the oscillation way down, you get a long kind of that doesn't sound great. But if we up it back up so that's a more of a rhythmic oscillation, I wonder if it takes the trumpet sound and it gives it more of like a kind of like a vibrato. Let's find out. Yes, the answer is it does that very rapidly. So I think the rate would have to be dropped down to maybe like 50%. I think I'm hurting Edward's ears. We're definitely learning. Let's try 50% with the same thing. See what it sounds like. I think the rate is still too slow, but only a little bit too slow. So maybe 60? Maybe like 58? Because I'm trying to get it to oscillate at the same pitch as the rhythm. So I kind of wanted to go something like that. And I just want to see if it'll work. This will be really good to know in manipulating that filter effect later. Let's try it. I think it's still too slow. So maybe like 65? I'm gonna drop the volume down a little bit so it's not quite so loud. That's closer. It's kind of more in line with what I was looking for, but not exactly one-to-one. Real quick, I am going to run to the restroom real quick, so I'm gonna let the beat play in with the rhythm and the bass line, and then I'll be back in one sec, folks. All right, we're back. So if we play around with the rate a little bit more, maybe up it by like 1 or 2, I wonder how much of a difference it would make for that synth oscillation, because we're pretty close. Let's try 67. I'm just curious to see if we can get the rhythm to sync up exactly. So let's try it. seems like it's a fraction of a beat too fast. Now it seems like it's a fraction of a beat too fast. Sweet spot might be 66. That's close. I don't think I'd want it to be single pitch like that. But it is interesting to know that the rate affects the oscillation on the filter. I think that's the biggest takeaway from experimenting around with that. But I think I want to add an actual chime effect using the combination of the filter with different settings than the one I was just using, and then the granular delay. That's the one that creates the kind of chimey noise I use every once in a while. I kind of want to add a chime synth progression in the back. It might not be very loud, it might be subtle, but I think it would fit well with the bass line. So let's see if we can do that. I won't be able to talk, so I'll mess around and see what I can capture here. All right, let's turn that back on. Took me a little bit to kind of get something I liked on that synth. Kind of interesting though. It's very soft though. I might have to up it by like 30. Because right now that the fader for the synth track is at max, and it's still not that loud. We would probably be able to balance it out in the mix a little bit more, but for the sake of illustrating what we're doing here. I like that. It's interesting. Sounds a little bit different from the versions of that chime we've used on other songs. I'm gonna save that before I do anything else. If we listen to it just on its own, that new synth we just recorded sounds like a signal ping. It's got a little bit of resonance and kind of delay on it too, which is just from the granular delay effect itself. Edward says sounds like some Little John. Yeah, it's got like a little bit of that kind of like dirty Southish kind of aggro type of sound. Something you would hear in like the 2000s. What happens if we reverse it? And I think it's a little more grating in reverse. Definitely functional though. If we take the beat repeat and we chunk out a section that we're repeating to, this is what you get. Oh, weird. Vocal distortion kind of mutes out the rest of the tracks. That's an interesting effect. This is lo-fi. I'm just messing around with some track level effects on how we could potentially manipulate the beat itself. What if we added like a kind of shaker sound effect that's on a separate track that we can turn on and off? Kind of like a and we drop it down a little bit so that it's pretty subtle. That might be interesting. We can add some reverb on it too. That's an interesting compliment to the rhythm. What happens if we repeat the shaker too? Okay, so it cuts out, in and out. That's interesting. We could also just turn off that effect on the shaker altogether. I don't know what I like better. I think it kind of works better when it's coming in and out. can even put a drop in if we want to get really wacky with it. Darlad says, sounds like a bird singing. Yeah, a little bit. To me, it sounds like an electronic signal. If it was a little bit sharper and maybe a little more metallic, it would sound like kind of like a bird chirping. This one's interesting. I kind of like the combination of things we got so far. So let's save that. We'll add the shaker. We could do things like bring the shaker in and out. And just cut it in and out by dropping and raising the fader. All right, let's save that. We need a name for this thing, though. We could kind of bridge the gap between the idea of a signal and a bird. We can call it like signal chirp. I realized my reverb was on. Sorry about that. But signal chirp might not be a bad name for the song. For folks that are in chat, I welcome suggestions. That's an interesting section to loop. You could also think about maybe a part B to the song where we reverse the bass line. And it's interesting because the bass line fits symmetrically into the beat, forwards and backwards, at least pretty cleanly. If you leave the shaker and then the signal synth exactly the same, then it's just a different bass line and kind of like a switch up mid song. If there was a faster way to turn the track level effects on and off and restrict it to specific ones, I'd almost want the rhythm by itself to be looped for one section with the reverse. We can do that, just doing it on the fly mid-song is difficult. Like we would do it this way. We're basically turning off the input or the track level effects and leaving it only on the rhythm. And when we re-enable it on all of them, that's how we do like a drop type thing. I don't know if I want to do that for this one. I'll have to think about it. All right, let's unreverse that. I think the regular unreversed version of the bass line is what works better if we're going to do a drop. Again, I don't think I really want to for a hip-hop song, but all right. But we'll leave that the way it is. We got 4 tracks. Can always add something on the 5th one if we want. But I'm gonna go with Signal Chirp for that one. So I've actually been writing these down so I don't forget because I have bad memory. But Give me 1 second to pull up my notepad. We'll let this run for a sec. So I can write down the titles for all these and not forget. Where did I put that? Where did I put that file? Nope, not that one. Okay, I'll put that one on there. I need to go back and see if I used the signal in any of my other ones. I don't. Maybe I did. Nope, not that one. Where's stream sounds? Nope, not in stream sounds. We have alarm and radar. I don't see. I'll just search it. I don't. Maybe I didn't. That works. Yep. All right. Well, we're gonna go with signal chirp for that one. Make sure I save that so I don't forget. All right. So that will definitely call it for that one. That took a little bit longer than some of the other ones we've worked on. Admittedly, I didn't expect it to be almost an hour and a half just to do one track, but I'm kind of happy with the results. I think that one will function well for like a hip-hop type of song. And if I ever need a beat to rap on, then I have one kind of handy that's really simple. So let's see. Before we jump off for the day, in fact, let me see. Before we go into raids and everything, I did want to show off some stuff I've been working on outside of stream, like a sneak peek. So I'm gonna have to jump back through my loop a little bit to find the ones I'm looking for, but I'll show off maybe one or two that I didn't show off last time. So let's see. All right. Make sure I turn my boosts back on. I didn't do that last time, so it was probably hard to hear me. That should be good enough. Okay, what we're listening to now is a track from one of next year's BGM packs. And I don't think I showed this one off. That's okay. I don't want to give too much away, but this is going to be like a prototype version. This one's already been recorded, and I have it written down. I forget what it's called, but that'll be a surprise for later. But this is part of the kind of down-tempo, trip-hop, ambient pack that I'm working on for the spring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the different layers, and I'll let a prototype version kind of play so you folks can hear preview. think I did show this one off. My bad. I remember that oboe run. Well, then I'm gonna do a different one. So for some folks who might not have been on that stream and didn't hear it, this is again that prototype version of a track that's coming up for next year. But let me grab another one. It'll be from a different pack. Edward, you might have been there. I don't know. That's fine. I do like that one a lot. I specifically remember mentioning not keeping that oboe run in there. Shows how much I remember what I do in my streams. All right, let me find another one. It'll be from a different project. Okay, I know I haven't shown off this version of this song. I might have shown off a previous attempt at this one, but it's been a while, so most people probably haven't heard this. Let's give this one a try. I'll make it a little bit easier. I think this is the third time I recorded this one. But this version would be different from whatever one I've shown off before. Edward, you were probably here for the earlier version of this one. This flute part is different. Anyway, that's the not the final arranged version, because the actual recorded one's a little bit different as far as what order stuff happens, but those are all the instrument level tracks for that one. And that particular song's part of the next BGM project that's coming out at the beginning of next year. And we are in the process of finishing up all of the stuff for it. I'd say it's probably about 70%, 75% done, maybe 80% done. And I'm going to need to start doing some editing soon. But that one is shaping up to be really interesting. It's going to be different from everything else I've done so far, like I've mentioned before, because it's focused on like RPG RPG music, essentially. That's what was the inspiration for that one. And so I've already teased it on Twitter. It's called The Lost Kingdom. And we'll be probably launching that one maybe by January or end of January. Maybe February, depending on timing. But I'm really excited about that project. It's been a lot of fun to work on. And the stuff I've been working on for the next one is some of the kind of down-tempo stuff you've heard so far. Maybe by the next stream, I'll have one of the higher energy electronic songs done. I haven't recorded any yet, but that's going to be for the other half of that spring project. And so lots of stuff in the works, a lot of music related stuff, a lot of things I want to get done and try in 2023. So I think that will put us in a good stopping place for the jam stream today. Let me go take a look at the homie list and see who's online, and we will go and raid somebody. None of the people I know are online at the moment. Edward, since you give pretty good recommendations for folks that you follow and like to support, do you have anybody from your list that you'd like to send us over to spread the vibes? If so, drop their name in chat and then I'll look them up. And we can go say, what's up? Neon Harper. Okay, let me look them up. I was gonna say if they're VTubers, especially, that's good, but they don't have to be. Okay, they are playing Cult of the Lamb. All right, we will go ahead and raid Neon Harper. So let me turn this off. We'll go ahead and go to outro. And we'll call that a stream. So I need to figure out the schedule for next week. It'll go up at some point for the end of the day today. But until the next time, thanks again for hanging out, folks. Next week should be a somewhat regular schedule, and then I'm hoping to do something a little bit different for the week after Christmas. It'll depend on some planning and stuff, so we'll see. But again, thanks for hanging out. Hopefully we covered some interesting stuff today. And now let us go and raid